Iran prepares to vote for a new president. We'll examine what's at stake in an election that will define the future direction of the Republic and the wider Middle East. I'm Dana Lewis, and this is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Iran is preparing to vote for a new president in a contest likely to define not only the future for its people, but its relationship with the wider world. Its current president, Hassan Rouhani, is seeking a second term. He's a moderate who brokered the historic nuclear deal with the U.S. in 2015. But while the international community is focused on the Republic's interests in Iraq and Syria, many voters in Iran will be focused on the economy. Here's Sarah Firth.
Iran is about to go to the polls. But here in this bustling working-class district of Tehran, there's little enthusiasm ahead of the upcoming presidential election.
I think that in the past 4 years there have been more negative results, and poverty and unemployment have increased.
All those who are in charge must join hands to solve problems. But unfortunately this hasn't happened, and in the future I don't think anything will happen regardless of who is elected president.
For the past 4 years, Iran has been guided by moderate cleric President Hassan Rouhani, whose historic nuclear deal was designed to bring Iran in from the cold. A Rouhani rally. And thousands have turned out to support the incumbent president. At the halfway point, we don't turn back, chants the crowd. That chant a response to Rouhani's critics, who say the nuclear deal didn't deliver the economic stability that was promised. Despite some sanctions being lifted, Iran's economy is still struggling and unemployment is high. Opposition leader Ibrahim Raisi has been able to galvanize that discontent into strong support. Though there are 5 candidates running, the main contest will be between just 2.
They've got the hardliners led by Ibrahim Raisi, and you have the so-called moderates or reformists led by the current president, which is Hassan Rouhani. Rouhani's supporters are not necessarily like all of them are his supporters, so they're just choosing the best of a bad bunch. They really don't have much of a choice.
But who wins this election matters, not least because of the hand they'll have in regional decisions. Ever since Iran's 1979 revolution, which saw the monarchy overthrown and the country become an Islamic republic, Shia Iran has been engaged in a proxy war with Sunni Saudi Arabia. Now, throughout the region, Iran's proxy militias have direct influence in major regional conflicts.
Predominantly in Syria, to a lesser extent in Iraq through the central government of Iraq in Baghdad. They support the Houthi rebels in Sana'a, in Yemen, and they support Lebanon's Hezbollah.
To many in the West, Iran still seems a secretive state. To understand what's happening in Iran now, its power struggles and its regional influence, we have to understand its past. And for that, I met a woman who lived through the Islamic Revolution and the Iran-Iraq War and now lives in London.
We had 8 years of war, and Tehran was, I mean, by then, maybe 3 times a day, Saddam was, bombing Tehran. It was, honestly, it was, I'm very lucky that I'm alive.
Iran, Fariba says, is misunderstood. And with past elections and this election, people are hoping for change.
Okay, we have hardliners in Iran, but you'll be amazed. When you go to Iran, you see the most intellectual people in Iran, very modern people in Iran. So people were very hoping when they chose Rouhani, and they say that he's holding a key. There was some negotiation with Obama, with America, obviously. That was a good thing. For some time, It was like a hope for Iranian. But this time, I don't think there will be any changes whatsoever. Economically, we're going down. The sanctions still there, and the tension is there.
Under the Iranian system, candidates need an absolute majority of votes to win. If no candidate wins more than 50% of the vote in the first round, the top two candidates go to a second round runoff. Rouhani is perceived as being the front-runner. But whoever wins, Iran's direct influence in the region is unlikely to decrease. And inside Iran, many people feel that either way, little will change. Sarah Firth, reporting for Insight.
All right, I'm joined now by Pejman Abdul Mohammadi, who is a research fellow in political science at the Middle Eastern Studies at the London School of Economics, and Saeed Kamali Dakan, who is an Iranian-British journalist and writes for the British newspaper The Guardian. Welcome to you both. Does the election matter? Because you have two candidates, Rouhani and Ibrahim Raisi, who are diametrically different.
Yeah, basically, yeah, of course, these elections are very important in a crucial election for the future of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If Rouhani will win, we will have another kind of foreign policy and also domestic affair. If Raisi will win, we have another one. So it matters.
Elections matter in Iran. You know, some people say it's not a fair election. There is some point to that because not everybody can become a candidate in Iran. There is a vetting process. But Iranian elections have been competitive. This election is highly competitive. And people turn out in high numbers, so that gives it a little bit of legitimacy. So it might not be a fair election, but it's a competitive election, and it's taken very seriously by the electorate.
One would think Rouhani, who has brought about economic reform, who was able to negotiate the nuclear deal and try to lift the economy, would have a lot of support in the street, and yet there's a lot of disappointment economically with what he's done. Why is that?
Well, basically, Rouhani started to make a structural changing. So it takes time, in my opinion. In the first 4 years, he has been working and to make better economy, make better the exchange relation of Iran with other countries.
So there's this big lag time on the sanctions being lifted.
Exactly. I mean, it takes time. I mean, this is important, but we have now tourism growing, we have different kind of thing. It might in the next 4 years getting better. But
voters tend to have very short attentions on this, though. They want it now. They want better economic conditions now.
I think the problem is that Iranians had high expectations of the nuclear deal. Personally, I think Rouhani succeeded in stabilizing the economy. He brought down inflation from 40% to a digit, one single-digit inflation. He managed to stabilize the economy. He managed to stabilize the fluctuation in the foreign currency, for example. But unemployment is still high. And I think one of the problems was that expectations were so high about the nuclear deal that it was not met. And I don't think that Rouhani has not done enough to make it better for the Iranians. The problem is that the West, UK, US, for example, have not done enough in their side, for example, in giving Iran better access to the international community, the global market, and the banking system.
Very quickly, I don't want to dwell on it, but President Trump, is he fueling this election in any way with some of his comments, tearing up the nuclear deal and taking a harder line with Iran?
You know, the change of the global policy by arrival of Trump is influencing the domestic affair of Iran. So basically, the end of the Obama doctrine definitely decreased the power of the pragmatists in Iran who are backed by Rouhani. Basically, I think that the arrival of Trump might make stronger the part of the conservative which Raisi represents.
Iranian hardliners love Donald Trump. Donald Trump on Friday, and when Iranians go to the polls, is traveling to Saudi Arabia, his first foreign trip. It sends a big message to Iran. But it's also interesting, he's traveling to Saudi Arabia that doesn't hold any presidential elections. Like Iran's Supreme Leader said today, rightly I think, that holding elections is a dream for many countries in the region. Many of the US allies in the region don't have elections. And Iran has that, every year in Iran you have some sort of elections. There are a lot of problems. There's a question of fairness. There's a question of political prisoners in jail, human rights record.
Has any of that gotten any better? Has any of that gotten any better? Some people say press freedoms are a little more liberal as they've been now. People are not taking, for instance, their articles before they write to the intelligence agencies, and that's exactly what they did during Ahmadinejad's term.
It has got better. It has got easier to publish books. It has got easier to write articles. There's less journalists in jail.
Can they criticize?
They can criticize. The red line is, of course, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, but anything else in Iran, you can almost criticize.
I mean, beyond going the red line, Islamic Republic of Iran, politically, scientifically speaking, is a hybrid regime. Is a peculiar hybrid system. It means has a part of representative and a part of semi-authoritarian system. So I mean, we can't say that is a pure authoritarian, but we can't also say that doesn't have representative system within.
Okay, well, what about under Ibrahim Raisi if he wins? I mean, this is a hardline guy. He's one of 4 judges who ordered mass executions of dissidents in Iran.
That's a big worry. I mean, there are perils of Raisi presidency, and there are questions whether he's eyeing for a presidency or he's eyeing for a thing bigger than presidency, supreme leadership. You know, we know that the supreme leader of Iran...
He has been the one that people are talking, he may be next in line.
Exactly. Supreme leader of Iran underwent a prostate surgery in 2014 that has risen extensively the speculations about the next supreme leader. And it is true that while he is still alive, he has the ultimate power in Iran. But in the event of his death, the president suddenly becomes the first person in Iran who can have huge influence. And you know, if you remember, Khamenei himself was president when Ayatollah Khomeini, the former supreme leader, died. So this election is not only about presidency, it's also about who, in the event of Khamenei's death, yes, what will happen then? That's why this election is very important in terms of whether hardliners will get back to power in Iran or reformists will have an upper hand.
Go ahead.
One thing about that, what Saeed said, I mean, basically, normally the Islamic Republic in the last 20 years always favored that the president, the incumbent president, will be re-elected. But according to Raisi now, is the first time actually that a guy coming from the establishment is going to challenge the president in office, which is leaving. So that's something that could be related also to the health of the
Can I ask before we move on, though, do you think that Raisi has the blessing of the supreme leader of Iran?
I mean, he has.
And if he does, how can he allow him to lose the election?
I mean, he has not directly, Khamenei has not directly endorsed Raisi, but the Revolutionary Guards are supporting Raisi. You know, all the establishment, like the Friday Imam prayers in provincial cities are supporting Raisi. They're meeting with him. They're speaking at the rallies. Those are the signs that the establishment is favoring Raisi.
How can they allow him to be bruised in an election then? Doesn't he have to win?
That's the interesting part of the Islamic Republic, which is a hybrid system, and I call it the Persian gelatine, a gelée. So basically, you never know what could happen. That's why it makes it exciting. I
mean, it's very unpredictable. I mean, as Pejman said, all 4 predecessors of Rouhani have served 2 terms in office. If Rouhani doesn't win, it would be quite unusual. He would be the first Iranian president for 2 decades at least to have served only one term.
But then put Raisi in the mix, there's a big question mark.
Exactly. I mean,
and Rouhani actually has come out now, and he said that in this election, at a campaign rally, people don't accept those who only knew executions in prisons for 38 years. I mean, that is tough talk in Iran.
That is quite unprecedented. You know, Rouhani has sharpened his voice to an extent that he's sounding anti-establishment. He's sounding, you know, very quite unusual for a sitting Iranian president. He's revived the Green Movement in a way. Like yesterday, the opposition leaders under house arrest issued messages that they are going to support Rouhani in this election. So stakes are high both for him and the establishment. If he wins, I mean, he has...
What about this? What about for the West? Because Raisi said in the debate, we shouldn't show any weakness in the face of the enemy, referring to America. I mean, that takes us back a decade, and surely that does not bode well if Raisi's elected for the West in America.
I mean, Raisi would be like having another Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in office, I guess.
Well, basically, I think if Raisi will be elected, the influence in terms of global policy and the relation of Tehran with global powers, the influence of China and Russia will increase, and the influence of the Western forces will decrease. And vice versa, if Rouhani will be elected, the EU and US, they have more chances, and maybe Russia and China will be decreased at their influence. That's very important to underline.
Pejman, Saeed, great insight. It's an election we're all going to watch on Friday. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
This is Insight. Coming up, after the 1979 revolution, the rights of women in Iran were restricted. But what's life like in 2017? We'll be discussing that right after this break.